and welcome to the 59th Annual City of Torrance Armed Forces Day Celebration and Evening Concert. The City of Torrance is proud of to be the longest continuously running Armed Forces Day celebration in the nation, and one of only a few organized celebrations authorized by the Department of Defense. Our city and community take great pride in being able to honor our brave men and women in uniform for the sacrifices they have made and continue to make in defense of the freedoms we so dearly enjoy. As we begin tonight, please join me in rising for the presentation of colors by the Joint Services Color Guard, led by First Sergeant Rashina Jones with the United States Army.
Left, 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 right, left, 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 right, left, 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 right, left, 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 right, left, 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 right,
Thank you, and please be seated. Tonight we are privileged to have a number of dignitaries in attendance. Our Grand Marshal, Major General Eric M. Smith with the United States Marine Corps, Commanding General, 1st Marine Division, and his wife, Patricia. Major General Mark Hollitzer, United States Army Reserve Commanding General, 79th Theater Sustainment Support Command, and his wife, Donna. Brigadier General Jeff Broadwater, United States Army Commanding General, National Training Center on Fort Irwin, and his wife, Alicia. Brigadier General David G. Smith, United States Army National Guard and State Reserve Deputy Commander, California State Military Reserve, and his wife, Denise. Rear Admiral Todd A. Salzik, United States Coast Guard, Commander, 11th Coast Guard District. And Rear Admiral Ronald Fritzmeyer, United States Navy Chief Engineer, Space and Naval Warfare Systems Command, and his wife Debbie. And we are also honored to have Mayor Patrick Fury and wife Terry, Council Member Kurt Wiedemeyer and his wife Sue Golden, Councilman Milton Herring and wife Cinda, Councilwoman Heidi Ann Ashcroft and her husband Dan, Councilman Jeff Rizzo, accompanied by his wife Donna, Councilman Tim Goodrich, and Councilman Mike Griffiths with his guest, Cecilia Geronimo. And we are also honored to have City Treasurer Dana Cortez with us tonight. And finally, Chief of Police, Chief Eve Irvine is with us this evening. And as a reminder, following this concert, please remain seated until all dignitaries have been escorted out of the theater. Thank you. Good evening again, and welcome to beautiful Torrance Cultural Arts Center in beautiful Torrance, California. On behalf of the 300th Army Band, thank you for joining us to pay tribute to our American heroes, both civilian and military alike. Over the course of this evening's concert, the soldier musicians of the 300th will guide you on an epic journey through some familiar sounds of the American soundscape. Throughout our nation's history, times of war and conflict have given birth to some of our most memorable music. Whether songs of love or loss, patriotism or protest, these are the tunes that were played in our homes and sung on the front lines. They are the melodies heard on the radio and carried in the hearts of servicemen and women to battlefields around the world. This is the music that would heal the wounds of a nation, unite our communities, and define the American era. And now please welcome to the stage Commander of the 300th Army Band, Warrant Officer 2, Jeff Smith. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are able, please rise for the playing of our national anthem. Just as the great John Philip Sousa was nicknamed the American March King, Kenneth J. Alford is hailed as the British March King. As the bandmaster for the British Army, his frequent use of the saxophone contributed to the permanent inclusion of saxophones in all military bands. He is also credited with arranging the first piece of military music to include a bagpipe. So now you know who to blame. for the inclusion of saxophones and bagpipes in parades all around the world. This next piece, entitled Army of the Nile, was penned in celebration for the British victory in Egypt and demonstrates the pomposity and glory of the British-style marches still used today. In 1818, when asked about the reasons for the American Revolution, John Adams wrote, "But what do we mean by the American Revolution? Do we mean the American War? The Revolution was effected before the war commenced. The Revolution was in the minds and hearts of the people. A change in their sentiments, of their duties and obligation. This radical change in the principles, opinions, sentiments, and affections of the people was the real American Revolution." In the early morning of April 9, 1775, a company of British regulars met a group of Massachusetts Minutemen on a still dewy field in Lexington and demanded they disperse in the name of the Crown. The Minutemen did not, and the shot heard round the world rang out from one of the two sides. Which of the two has been lost to history? The music of the Revolutionary War told the story of a people from dozens of backgrounds and homelands transforming into a new nation. This music was a mix of English, Irish, and Scottish folk songs, combined with French ballads from fur traders and hymns from pilgrims who traveled to find freedom in a new world. It was through this musical melting pot that the spirit of America was given a voice. In 1893, a 33-year-old English professor from Wellesley College, Massachusetts, took a train bound to Colorado Springs to teach a short school session at the college there. Along the way, her journey included sights and vistas such as the World's Fair in the White City of Chicago, the wheat fields of America's heartland in Kansas, and majestic views of the Great Plains from high atop Zebulon's Pikes Peak. At the pinnacle of that mountain, surrounded in splendor and natural wonder, the words of a poem came to her. Published 2 years later to commemorate the 4th of July, Catherine Lee Bates' poem was later married to a hymn composed by Samuel E. Ward. Like Bates, Ward wrote his hymn on a ferry boat after being moved on his own trip to Coney Island. So desperate was he to write down the suddenly inspired melody, he grabbed his friend's sleeve and wrote it on the shirt cuff. That's Coney Island for you. Published in 1910, America the Beautiful became an instant, timeless anthem. This next piece is a fantasy on that boundless serenade to the beauty and majesty of the American landscape. One would be incredibly hard-pressed to go through an entire evening about patriotic music and splendor and military might without at least one song by Philip Sousa, right? Can we agree? That's a thing. Tonight will be no different. And as always, clapping during the march is, of course, very welcome. During his childhood, Sousa studied voice, violin, piano, flute, baritone, and trombone. When Sousa was 13, his father, who was a trombonist with the Marine Band, enlisted him in the United States Marine Corps as an apprentice to keep him from joining the circus band. And this, of course, began the tradition of musicians joining the military in order to not join the circus. In addition to composing over 136 marches and several operettas, Philip Sousa became the director of the President's own Marine Corps Band in 1880 and served under 5 different presidential administrations. In this next march, entitled Manhattan Beach, it was composed for a series of concerts by the seaside resort town by that name, near Coney Island. The march is a musical portrait of an evening at the resort, including fireworks, riding on a carousel, the sound of lapping ocean waves, and a marching band moving up and down the street of the town. As the United States entered World War I in April of 1917, American public opinion was strongly divided, as most Americans believed that the United States should stay out of a European war. However, opinion began to gradually change, partly in response to German atrocities in Belgium, as well as the sinking of the Lusitania. The nation would eventually come to rally around President Wilson's position that America played a vital role in making the world safe for democracy. During this time, however, there was certainly no controversy or public debate over the celebrity of the great American songwriter and entertainer George M. Cohan. Known in the decade before and during World War I as the man who owned Broadway, Cohan is considered the father of the American musical comedy. In addition to composing, producing, and appearing in more than 36 Broadway musicals, Cohan published more than 300 songs, including the standards Over There, Give My Regards to Broadway, The Yankee Doodle Boy, and Your Grand Old Flag. At a time of war, the music of Cohen was an inspiration and unifying element for a nation that was on the verge of becoming a global superpower. And please welcome to conduct this piece, Sergeant First Class Kirk Wang. All right. So I'd like to tell a story. A little story. Promise. Very small. The legend of the dog tag goes back to the American Civil War. And the American Civil War was different than the other wars that we had fought in the past. The American Civil War took people away from the homes that their families had settled, that their families had come to, and sent them to parts of the nation they didn't even know about. And most of them never came back. So, challenged with this, soldiers on both sides begun writing their names and their hometowns on a piece of paper and attaching it inside of their jacket, so if they were to fall, they could find their way back home again and be greeted by their loved ones. Our job in the United States Army Band is to tell stories of our fellow soldiers, to tell stories of civilians, and to pass on those legends. Now, those dog tags of old turned into letters. So now we're still issued dog tags, but all soldiers write letters, especially to tell our loved ones what we would say if we couldn't tell them before we went on to the next great adventure. And this letter that I would like to tell you tonight is one of those. If you're reading this, my mama's sitting there. Looks like I only got a one-way ticket over here. I sure wish I could give you one more kiss. And war was just a game we played when we were kids. Well, I'm laying down my gun, I'm hanging up my boots, I'm up here with God, and we're both watching over you. So lay me down in that open field out on the edge of town, and know my soul is where my mama always prayed that it would go. If you're reading this, I'm already home. If you're reading this halfway around the world, I won't be there to see the birth of our little girl. I hope she looks like you, I hope she fights like me, and stands up for the innocent and the weak. Well, I'm laying down my gun, I'm hanging up my boots. You tell Dad I don't regret that I followed in his shoes. So lay me down in that open field out on the edge of town, and know my soul is where my mama always prayed that it would go. If you're reading this, I'm already home. If you're reading this, there's gonna come a day when you'll move on and find someone else, and that's okay. Just remember this, I'm in a better place, where soldiers live in peace and angels sing amazing grace. So lay me down in that open field out on the edge of town, and know my soul is where my mama always prayed that it would go. If you're reading this, I'm already home. I'm already home.
Staff Sergeant Madrona Avenue. Sergeant, same with you on the piano. Well, thank you so much for being here tonight. We are thrilled to be able to share Torrance Armed Forces Day celebration with you once again. We feel like we've become a regular around here, and we like that a lot. We like coming to Torrance as often as possible, so thank you for the warm reception. If you've had a chance to look at your program this evening, printed on the left side is our mission. And that mission is not something that we just got together and, over some cocktails decided what we wanted to do with our lives. That's a mission that comes down from our higher headquarters. We come from people way up the food chain who say, this is what we want Army musicians to do. And so therefore we take that mission very, very seriously. And a big part of our mission is our opportunity to communicate with our citizens and to share with our citizens the stories of our heroes all around the world, and to remind our nation that we are an army, that we are a nation at war, and that we have heroes around the world who are fighting that war on our behalf, so that we can sit here in this evening and enjoy a concert together. And so we want to dedicate this next song to those heroes who are scattered around the world, fighting and often still dying for us to this day.
Stars, we live in here today, and the nights you
Born the youngest of 5 children to a Jewish immigrant family in Brooklyn, New York, there are few American composers whose reach and influence are as timeless as Aaron Copland. Often referred to as the dean of American composers, Copland helped to forge a distinctly American style of composition throughout the 1930s and 40s through writing powerful orchestral works and penning soundtracks to the American movie classics of Mice and Men and Our Town. While working on the score for Martha Graham's ballet, Appalachian Spring, Copland incorporated a local Shaker hymn named Simple Gifts into the piece. The humble, sprightly melody took off and became a classic American folk song. For what difference if I hail from north or south, or from east to west? My heart is filled with love for all of these. This is my country, land of my birth. This is my country, grandest on earth. Written in 1940 by the popular vaudeville songwriters Al Jacobs and Don Ray, the American folk song This Is My Country celebrates the great American melting pot. Written during a time when American citizens were unifying as the impending World War loomed ahead, they intended to write a now famous song as the hymn to a quilt work of the American spirit. Both composers would go on to write or co-write other classic American songs such as Boogie Woogie Boo Boy, If I Give My Heart to You, I Need You to Know, and scores of tunes for films such as The Wild Rebels, Crocodile Dundee, and The Karate Kid. And now it's our pleasure to play for you one of the first American folk songs, This Is My Country. As Chief Smith said earlier, the mission of the United States Army Band Program is to provide music throughout the spectrum of military operations, to instill in our soldiers the will to fight and win, to foster the support of our citizens and promote our national interests both at home and abroad. We certainly hope that we've done so tonight, and this evening has been as wonderful for you as it has been for us. Now, we're not done yet, and there's still some great music on its way, but no concert celebrating our nation's military would be complete without a salute to all of the brave men and women in each branch of our armed forces. During this next piece, we invite you to stand, if you are able, to be recognized for yours or a family member's service to our nation's military. United States Coast Guard. The United States Marine Corps. The United States Air Force. The United States Navy.
I'm just trying to be a father, raise a daughter and a son, be a lover to their mother, everything to everyone, up and out of bright and early, all business in my suit. Yeah, I'm dressed up for success, from my head down to my boots. I don't do it for the money, there's bills that I can't pay. I don't do it for the glory, I just do it anyway. Providing for our futures, my responsibility. Yeah, I'm real good under pressure, being all that I can be. I've been calling sick on Mondays and the weekend been too strong. I work straight through the holidays, sometimes all night long. You can bet that I stand ready when the wolf prowls at the door. And I'm solid, and I'm steady, and I'm true down to the core. And I will always do my duty, no matter what the price. I've counted up the cost, I know the sacrifice. Oh, I don't want to die for you, but if dying's asking me, I'll bear that cross with honor, 'cause freedom don't come free. I'm an American soldier, an American
Thank you so much, Torrance. You've been amazing. We'll see you at the parade tomorrow. It's going to be epic. Get home safe.